They say some frequencies were never meant to be heard again. In 1962, a woman vanished during a live radio broadcast in rural Kentucky. Her final words were, "He's here." 60 years later, that same frequency came back. And what one technician heard inside the static was not just a voice, it was a warning. Tonight, you'll hear what he heard.
The night it began, the air was thick with rain and static. Ethan Miller sat alone in the small control booth of WKBR Radio, a forgotten AM station in the heart of Kentucky's coal country. The storm outside had swallowed the sky, lightning flickering through the windows like dying camera flashes. He adjusted the dials, fighting interference that refused to fade. Then, through the hiss, a voice trembled, feminine, distant, as though buried under layers of time. "Can you hear me?" Ethan froze, his hand hovering above the console. It wasn't part of any broadcast frequency. It wasn't even supposed to exist. He swallowed, replying into the mic. "This is WKBR. Identify yourself." Static roared back. Then, "Please, help me. He's here." The words were raw, breaking with terror. The temperature in the booth dropped. The hairs on Ethan's arms rose. He checked the signal. Nothing. No source. The voice came from nowhere, and yet filled the entire room. Then the power flickered. For one heartbeat, every screen went black. When they returned, the tuner dial had shifted, all on its own, landing precisely on 103.7 FM. Ethan stared. The station hadn't existed in decades. And yet, faintly beneath the thunder, a woman began to sob through the static. The next morning, Ethan combed through hours of recordings. No trace of the transmission existed. No frequency match, not a timestamp, not even a glitch in the signal. It was as if the night before had been erased. Marcy, his co-worker, joked that he was hearing ghosts again. But Ethan couldn't laugh. Something about the voice, the desperation, clung to him. That night, he stayed after hours, determined to capture proof. The storm returned, heavy and electric. He tuned through the bands until he reached 103.7 FM. Silence. Then, faintly, the same static, swelling like a heartbeat. "He found me," the woman's voice trembled. "Don't let him in." Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. He turned toward the studio door. The handle was moving, slow, deliberate. The air filled with a hum, not quite mechanical, not quite human. He lunged for the light switch, but the bulbs exploded overhead. Darkness swallowed the booth, and within that black void, the radio continued whispering his name. Haunted by what he'd heard, Ethan dove into local history. He searched through digital archives, newspaper microfilms, even FCC logs. That's when he found her, Mary Harlan, host of The Midnight Hour on WQRV Radio in 1962. Her show had been one of Kentucky's first female-led broadcasts, until the night she vanished mid-air. The last recorded words on her transmission were, "He's here." Ethan's blood chilled. The coordinates of WQRV's tower were only 30 miles from his studio. Even stranger, its operating frequency had been 103.7 FM, the signal that no longer existed. He called local historians, desperate for details, but no one remembered the case. One old engineer said the station burned down after Mary's disappearance. He said the static never stopped, even after the fire. Ethan ended the call, staring at his own reflection in the booth glass. For just a moment, he swore another reflection blinked behind his, female, pale, and flickering like interference.
Ethan returned to the booth the next night, bringing his old tape recorder. Midnight arrived, and with it came the hum of static that pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Please turn it off," the woman's voice cried. The sound was layered, distorted, like a recording played backward. Then came the reflection again, this time clearer. A woman stood behind him in the glass, her hair matted, face half lit by the console glow. Her eyes were hollow voids. Ethan spun around, but no one was there. Yet her scent, ozone and burnt copper, hung in the air. His recorder captured everything. When he replayed it, his stomach turned. The voice whispered right beside his ear, "He's almost through." And in that instant, every radio in the building turned on at once, all tuned to 103.7, each whispering fragments of her sobs, layered, pleading, endless. Days blurred. Ethan stopped going home. Sleep became impossible. Every test he ran came back clean. No electromagnetic spikes, no outside interference. And yet, every night the signal returned, growing stronger. Sometimes she screamed for help. Other times she warned him, "Don't answer. Don't let him speak." One night, the voice broke into two, hers and something else, deep, male, not human. "You shouldn't listen," it growled, resonating from the walls themselves. Ethan's equipment rattled violently, the lights dimmed to blood red. He tried to kill the power, but the switch refused to move. The console's LEDs pulsed like veins. The static was no longer just sound, it was alive. The signal shifted pitch until it formed a single thunderous word: "Stay." Ethan fled the booth, tripping over cables. But even outside, through the pounding rain, he could still hear it, the static following him, whispering his name over and over again. Ethan mailed his last recording to Dr. Linda Crane, a paranormal acoustics researcher from Lexington. When she analyzed the file, her software glitched. The waveform duplicated itself, showing two voices speaking simultaneously, each at opposing frequencies. One human, one unclassified. She called Ethan immediately, but when he answered, all she heard was static. Then a faint voice whispered, "He took him." Authorities arrived at the WKBR studio the next day. The door to the booth was locked from the inside. The room was freezing, the walls coated in a thin layer of condensation. Ethan was gone. The only object left behind was his tape recorder, still running. The final 3 seconds captured a whisper so low It made their skin crawl. Now you'll hear me too.
WKBR shut down within the weeks. The FCC conducted a full review, citing equipment corruption and unauthorized transmission. But every technician who entered the room complained of the same thing, hearing faint voices when their radios were off. Some claimed the voices knew their names. Dr. Crane kept the tape, analyzing it frame by frame. When reversed, the woman's voice said something chillingly clear. "He speaks through us." That night, her car radio turned on by itself. The display showed no station, only a blank frequency. And then, softly, a voice whispered, "Thank you, Linda." She threw the radio from the window, but at 3:07 a.m., it began to play again from the lawn below. Months passed. The abandoned studio rotted, its walls peeling with mold, its power grid long dead. Yet one frequency still broadcast in secret. Truckers driving past Winchester reported picking up faint sobbing on 103.7 FM during storms. Some heard a woman begging for help. Others swore a second voice commanded them to stop their vehicles. One driver obeyed, and moments later avoided a massive pileup caused by a fallen power line. He told police, "The voice told me to stay alive." Investigators brushed it off as fatigue. But that night, in his motel room, his radio turned on by itself, and through the static, a whisper, "He knows you listened." In 2022, a paranormal web channel called Southern Haunts live-streamed from the ruins of WKBR. The team tuned a vintage receiver to 103.7 FM. Within seconds, the broadcast erupted, high-pitched, piercing, almost painful. Then came the woman's voice, "You shouldn't have come." Viewers watched as the team's lights flickered one by one, the camera feed distorted, faces stretching like melting wax. A shadow crossed behind them, tall, shapeless. One of the crew screamed and the stream cut abruptly to black. Authorities found the equipment days later. Everything was intact except the receiver. Its interior melted. Only one sound remained on the memory card: slow, labored breathing, and a faint, trembling voice whispering, "He's here." Today, modern radios can't pick up 103.7 FM anywhere in eastern Kentucky. But on nights when lightning crawls across the sky, amateur operators claim to catch it just for a moment. The sound of static, soft crying, and sometimes a name whispered that matches the listener's own. Locals say it's just folklore, an urban legend spun from loneliness and bad weather. Yet, every few years, someone vanishes near the old station ruins. Their last phone recordings always share the same signature: a low hum, a woman's plea for help, and one final burst of static. Somewhere, trapped between frequencies, the lost voice of Mary Harlan continues her broadcast, forever repeating the night she died. And if you're unlucky enough to tune in,
she won't be the only one calling through the static.
If you've reached this point, you've already heard what most people never should. The woman in the static is still out there, somewhere between silence and signal. So before you turn off your screen, ask yourself, what if she can hear you too? If you want to uncover more real stories the world tried to bury, subscribe to The Silent Screams, where true horror never fades, and every whisper could be someone's last broadcast.